guys, and welcome to the latest edition of Train with Honour TV. And today we're going to get a perspective from a basketball perspective. And I'm delighted to welcome Jordan Godfrey on the show. Jordan, welcome to the show, buddy.
Thank you for having me on. I'm really looking forward to the conversation.
Yeah, 100%. It's going to be really good. I mean, basketball is not a sport that I know an awful lot about, if I'm being totally honest. But you know, as we all had to, we had to. We're at school. We're exposed to every sport, aren't we? And to be fair, basketball is one of probably the most explosive sports where you're using virtually every muscle group, every energy system, and it's going to be really interesting. I'm really excited to sort of get an insight. So for the guys, just want to give them a bit of background information on who you are, where you're from, and your route into the game.
Yeah, of course. So I'm originally from Hertfordshire, but my basketball career per se as a playing side of things started in Cambridge, where I went to sixth form. We had a basketball academy there. So that's really where I fully dived into the sport, fell in love with it. And, you know, from that point at 16, I knew I wanted to work in basketball. So it was just figuring out how I'm going to go about having a career in it. And then went on to the University of Birmingham, where I did my undergrad in sport and exercise science. And I started my strength and conditioning career my first year, where I did an internship. And I just followed that internship for 3 years. So I was working with the sports performance group at the sports performance team, with the University of Birmingham. So working with Bucks team sports. They had some elite athlete, like really top level Commonwealth runners. So it was an amazing experience. I worked with 14 different sports in that time. So what you were talking about in terms of having to work with different sports that you're not familiar with. I mean, the craziest one was archery. That was one where me and the performance team we're in a meeting and we get told by the university that we're now getting 2 new archery athletes. We were going, what do you need to do? How the hell do we deal with this? So that was definitely, just exposure to that. And like you said, it's all very similar methods, but once you see it across so many sports, it starts to make sense and it starts to click. So any young strength coaches, that's always my advice, is start as broad as you can. Come across with as many different training techniques as possible, and that really helps. And so I did that for my 3 years during my undergrad. Also in my second year of my undergrad, I did an internship in Dallas, Texas.
Wow.
With Michael Johnson, the sprinter. He has a performance center in Dallas. So yeah, I was lucky enough to go out there for 3 months. They had a collection of NBA, NFL, Olympic, like summer and winter Olympians. So, that was unbelievable, like just completely surreal the whole time. From day one, I mean, I literally finished my summer exams, and then 2 days later, I was on a plane and just in there. So it didn't even feel real. I couldn't process it, but I was there and I was immersed in it. So, as you can imagine, with the name of Michael Johnson,
exactly.
it was a lot of speed work. So really understanding technical models of any form of speed development. And I just spent 3 months just trying to learn from these world leaders and how they go about, improving movement efficiency. And that's something that I've just carried with me for my whole career, is things that I learned from them over there. I then came back, finished my third year, graduated, and went straight to Loughborough Uni to do my master's, where I study exercise physiology. And whilst doing that, I was interning with the Leicester Riders, and that's where I am currently full-time. But I was interning, working mostly with the academy, just because the academy is based in Loughborough. Yeah. Then at the same time, I was consulting with a pathway for wheelchair basketball for GB, like one of the GB wheelchair basketball's development pathways. So I got some amazing experience with working with wheelchair athletes, which honestly is the single most inspiring thing I've ever done in my career.
The mindset's got to be strong for that, surely, in terms of what the athletes are doing, because obviously they're going to want to compare themselves to the able bodies, I suppose. But I guess it's going to be, like you say, it's one hell of an experience with that.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, just being around them and like their attitudes to the situation that they're in, they're so positive. They were so happy to be there and honored to be a part of that program. And, all of them were just focused on being better and being elite and being the best versions of themselves. And kind of seeing that is, nothing's more humbling than that and more inspiring. And from a technical side of things, you'll never get to know a shoulder better than working with wheelchair athletes. And understanding, trying to keep a shoulder healthy, because everything they do is going through that joint. So
they don't care, though, do they? I've had it with football. They just ram into each other, and they're like, right, I'm having that ball, whether I fall out of this chair or not. It's like, I'm having that.
No, exactly. I mean, it's I didn't realize until the first camp I went to, and they're slamming into each other, falling out of the chairs, and I was like, oh my God, this is high contact. So that was great. And then I was lucky enough last summer to work with GB Basketball, their under-16 men's team, and that's a position that I've held into this year as well. And then upon graduating, it fell into place that the lead strength conditioning coach role with the Leicester Riders opened up, and because I've been working with them for a full year already, they turned around and they offered it to me. And this has been my first season in professional sport. I'm full-time, so I lead with both the first team and the academy. So I'm responsible for about 60 athletes combined. So yeah. So the academies, they're aged 16 to 19. So it's attached to a sixth form. They play in the EABL, which is the Elite Academy Basketball League. So that's like the top academy league in the UK for basketball. And kind of the goal for them is mostly to try send them to colleges in the States and try and give them the best exposure here in the UK to best prepare them to go to the States. So very different how I'm approaching things with the academy versus the first team, where first team's obvious instant performance, and it's all about how can I keep this athlete on the court, keep them healthy, find ways to develop them to better their career and just general on-court performance. With the academy, yes, that's a part of it, but it's also, you're getting these kids in at 16. Most of them have never touched the weight before. So there's much more of the long-term athlete development with them, just teaching them, preparing them to go to these colleges, where then at the colleges, it's going to be more the performance focus. Whereas with us, it's, the foundation laying. If they have a really great foundation, we send them to a school and they can immediately get to skip that first year or so of teaching, then we've helped them in their careers.
That's a really good point you make about the long-term athletic development plan, which is something that a lot of S&C coaches don't particularly think about in any level of sport, really, unless you've really studied and got the experience. But even the athletes, but I don't know about yourself, Jordan, but very often I always get asked when I go to different clubs, should this player that's 12, 13 be lifting a weight? Are they safe to do a squat? Are they physically ready? Because of course we've got to consider the biological age. We've got to consider their, they're not fully functioned in terms of bone growth and everything like that. And what have you seen in terms of the progressions from the academy players that you've worked with so far in terms of their building of strength? I mean, has it influenced the confidence and the way they go about things as well?
Yeah, definitely. I think what's the nicest thing about having an academy where everyone's kind of playing for the same team versus having, an under 16 and under 17s and under 18s, like when it's all one program, there's a lot less pressure on the incoming year. You know, there's that expectation that it's going to take a year for them to get minutes on court anyway.
Yeah.
So from my side of things, I don't have to rush their process because we're not expecting that immediate on-court benefit of this person coming in on the program. And yes, there's exceptions, but just generically, you're bringing this guy in for them to perform in their second, and even if they decide to have a third year. So you can take that time to develop it and really be slow and patient with their development and building those blocks. And and then when they come back in that second year, I'm comfortable and now I can push them. But that being said, we had this season we had some great first years who fully committed to everything. And I mean, you just see it instantly on the court. We had players gaining, upwards of 8 kilos over a season. And I mean, when you're seeing that, just when you think about basketball, there is a lot of contact in terms of like fighting for positions on the court. And I mean, when you're carrying extra weight that you've built in the correct way, that's just absolutely huge. And the strength, I mean, like I said, some of these guys have never done any strength training before. So for them, getting them from doing a goblet squat to having 100 kilos on a bar on their back, like in terms of on-court performance, that it's instant for them and they really feel it. So if that answers the question, if that doesn't answer the question, let me know.
100%. And you hit the nail on the head when you were speaking about going from the goblet squat up to lifting 100 kilograms. What a lot of people need to understand with this is you're going to. I mean, if you're going in with the first one, I'm assuming obviously a lot of basketball players are about 6 foot plus. So weight wise, I suppose weight wise, it's going to be a minimum of like 75, 80 kilograms, upwards to about 90, 95. So when they're actually lifting that sort of weight in the gym, it is preparation for what they're actually going to do on the court. Because if you're going up to get the ball, or you're going into block, then I suppose if you get that little nudge off that player, if you're lifting that, if you're benching or lifting their weight, if not more, then in terms of the core stability, it's going to prepare you tenfold, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, core stability is such a huge part of basketball and basketball strength conditioning. Just for anything, like you said, fighting for position, or even when you're mid-flight and you have to make adjustments when you're in the air, core stability is a huge part of that and plays a role with that. But at the end of the day, same as we've said, like with strength conditioning, it's very similar across sports. Strength is strength, there's no substitute for it. Every sport needs it. Yeah. So it's developing, and we can go into those technical models, but it's just developing that general strength and that general ability, and then you can go to the sport specific stuff afterwards. Yeah. But it's that foundation. How can you squat? How do you deadlift? How do you lunge? How do you how do you hinge? All these generic things I need to see from you before I can start treating you as this elite and basketball specific athlete. I need you to be an athlete first, and then we can look at you becoming a basketball athlete. Yeah,
100%. So with that, John, I mean, what sort of testing do you look at with the players at Riders? Do you look at the sprint work much, or is it predominantly power and sort of strength work that you're doing?
Yeah, so in terms of performance testing, we're frequently testing jump height.
Vertical jump, yeah.
Yeah, vertical jump. I mean, we're using it to monitor performance and then also monitor fatigue, just looking for variations across weeks. So we use as part of our wellness routine is the jumping. So that's one way that we go about it. Yeah, same sprint performance of 10 and 20 meter sprint performance. We then look at broad jumps, so both double leg and then single leg, to look at asymmetries between it. They're the main performance ones, and then it's just tracking load in a weight room for the athletes. I'm not the biggest. I mean, I don't believe in 1 rep max testing. If I had gym aware, I would do predictive 1 rep max, but that's something that I don't have access to. So just understanding in your program and your blocks, this is the end of a 4-week, 6-week cycle. He's got 3 reps. Well, let's push this to be close to a 3-rep max and see how he improved. And it's just kind of testing on the go in the weight room as it makes sense. So that's kind of how we're monitoring strength throughout, rather than having that set testing phase where, I'm using a whole session just to 1-rep max. It's just, monitoring how the weight's progressing throughout. And that's just the easiest way.
Yeah, I was going to say, because if you've got 60 players to do this, it's obviously it's going to be, it's going to be. I mean, how do you manage that on court? I mean, obviously you've got a team around you as well. I mean, how do you monitor it in terms of tracking times? Do you set all the guys off at once, or is it a case and get them to be a bit accountable for like the sprint test, for example? Not the sprint test, sorry, for some of the power tests. Do you get them involved with the testing as well, so that they can read their own results? Or
so like I said, with the jump testing, I mean, we're doing that twice a week. So that's regularly. So we use as part of our wellness testing. So for our wellness, we're doing just a generic questionnaire, and then we're doing a knee to wall to see how how muscle stiffness is coming into play and how that's reflecting our practice. Single leg straight leg raise, so looking at hamstring tightness as well. So again, 2 measures of it. And then we're looking at jump height as well. So we've got those measures, and we do those the first training session that we have after a game weekend.
Yeah.
And then the last training session that we have with them before game weekend. So we're seeing how they've recovered after a weekend.
Yeah.
And then seeing how this training week's affected them. So that's how we're looking into it. So because we're doing those tests frequently, it's then giving them ownership of it. The jump is very easy to see a number and write it down next to your name, and it's the same with the knee to wall. It's the same with the questionnaire. So it's when you've got all that data to manage, it's just finding ways to get it. The hardest thing is the inputting. I mean, we've all been there with an Excel spreadsheet, and we're spending hours typing in numbers. So if I can get
coffee, don't you, on that?
Exactly.
Oh my god! With the
if I can get my athlete to do it, that's going to save me 30 minutes of my day. And then rather than just plugging away, putting numbers in, I can actually use the numbers I'm collecting. Which at the end of the day, that's the whole point of testing, not just collecting to collect.
I mean, do you say you use like an app or anything as well, where they can input it straight away? Because obviously there are apps about now, like things like My PT Hub and things like that, where I suppose they can take the ownership of it. Is that anything that you guys have used in the past, or?
No, so we're mostly still just Excel based, using Excel tricks for sport, hopping all over that.
Keep it old school, mate. It's best way, isn't it?
Mate, honestly, and just developing dashboards and manually inputting data. That's kind of we have looked into different softwares, how to use it. I mean, but like a lot of it is simple for a wellness questionnaire to do like a Google Forms, and you get that data back automatically, or literally just having them write it down on a piece of paper or type it in manually on your laptop, like just saving time. If it was a bigger program, then probably, and it would make sense. But as a team, we're currently looking into some options at the moment about how to centralize all this data and, find some softwares that can do it for us.
I suppose, it's just it's one of them. Don't change it if it's not broke, I suppose, isn't it?
Yeah.
So in terms of I'm just thinking about the fatigue monitoring as well, post game day. Obviously, there's going to be a difference depending on whether the players played for the full game or whether they've not. Is that sort of going to dictate whether they go and do gym-based training or mobility training as opposed to the technical side of it, or does it not really matter?
So I'll talk from the professional standpoint for this. So we, how we're using it with the pro team is always the day after a game is going to be a day off.
Rest day,
so that we're always just going to give them 24 hours. Some teams want to bring them in and make them do mobility work and do active recovery and things like that. But I just find, when you're in season, you're asking so much time of your athletes.
Yeah.
It's good for them to just have some time away from the training facility, from the coaches, from everyone else, and just go away, do what you need to do, get some sleep, recover. This is your day.
Yeah.
And then we'll bring it back in. So generally, when players are coming back in, we'll judge it from how heavy everything's been. But the biggest thing that I try and do is adapt what I'm doing in the weight room versus what's happening on court.
Yeah.
You always have to recognize that as much as you want them to be an amazing weight room athlete, at the end of the day, they're a sport athlete and they're playing sport. They're playing basketball. They're playing football. That's what they're paid to do. So if anything's got to change, it's going to be what I do outside of the sport, because you need to recognize the priority. So, just trying to keep the on-court stuff. You work in hand with the head coach and have those discussions, and that's why you're collecting the data. And I'm lucky where my coach is, he's very aware of wellness and cares and will adapt his training sessions daily based on how the athletes have responded to these questionnaires and how everyone's feeling. So the goal with us is always just, can the athlete be prepared come game day? And that's all we care about. So if we have to sacrifice the quality of the training throughout the week, then so be it, because at the end of the day, you don't win games based on training, you win games based on games. So
this is exactly it. And I'm exactly the same with football, because it I don't know whether you'll say it drives me mad, because obviously as an S&C coach, all you want to do is be in the gym, and you want, like you say, you want to be making them big. But it is really important that the communication element is there, and it takes a long time, doesn't it, to build the relationship with the coach, not just with the coach,
sure,
the physio, with the player themselves, with probably players' agents. Because one thing that you're probably going to have as well is, obviously, you're going to have some players that are going to want to do work outside, away from the court time as well. I mean, in terms of talk us through a typical day in a life of you as an S&C coach in basketball, just so that everyone gets an idea of what's involved for an elite athlete.
Yeah, so my days start early. So with the academy, either the boys or the girls team are going to lift at 6:30 in the morning
wow, that's early,
at the university gym. So nice and early, get it started. And then typically, so that will last about an hour, 90 minutes. And then typically our training with the first team is going to happen at 10 a.m. So it's kind of, okay, I've got this period right here, like 2.5 hours. And how I always approach training with the professional athletes is giving them ownership of when they want to come in and do the work.
That's great.
So rather than having big team sessions, which I still do sometimes, but I try and make it as individual as possible, because there's only one of me. So I'm trying to keep an eye on the athletes and, understand their development and be as locked in with that player as a time. So I try and have small groups. So potentially before that team practice starts, there's going to be a few players coming in to lift. And then we're going, so that's that period right there. And then when practice starts, I'm lucky enough where the coach gives me, 20, 30 minutes for a warm up. So that's every single day. So even before they come on court, I try and have athletes going through an individualized prehab routine that I've given to them. And
that's like self-led.
So self-led, give them, like I said, give them ownership. But that's why I like players coming through the weight room before practice, because, nothing's going to get someone's glutes more activated than 3-4 sets of squats. So stuff like that. So, again, them rolling through the weight room, and then on court, I have this warm up. So, every day is trying to, with everything, you're trying to always match the on-court load to what you're doing.
Yeah.
So whether it's a high day on court, then we're going high in the weight room to just match the stress, match the stimulus, so that they're always recovering. Like whatever stress they're coming across, it's always two of the same, so that if we have a planned low day on court, it's going to be a low day with me, so that they can actually recover in those days. So, and then it's just matching out with the warm up. So if there's a specific focus today in practice, it's a high day and we're working on defense, then what I'm going to be doing is working a lot of change of direction mechanics, following mobility activation, typical work like that. And this on-court period I have is honestly one of the best ways that I can microdose in some stimulus with the athletes. So high velocity sprints, high intensity cuts, stopping, braking, everything like that. I can put jumps into this, so this is a way that I can develop some power. I'm always using bands in the speed work, so now I've got some band resisted sprints. So you can definitely give a lot of stimulus in these periods, and it's every single day where I have that opportunity. So that's my main involvement in practice. And then during practice, it's either if there's a rehabilitating athlete, it's working with them, or if there isn't, then I can be a lot better of a useful tool for the head coach to have discussions during practice. And
that's great.
He's great in the sense of, they'll be going through a drill and he'll turn around to me and say, okay, how much longer, how much this, do I do another drill? And we have those conversations because he's very interested in not overworking athletes, which, is the dream when you're working in sport.
It's absolutely amazing that you've got that relationship where it's that appreciation, isn't it? He appreciates the fact that you're skilled in this element and the head coach is skilled in this. It's fantastic because the working relationship within the team is obviously crucial to how the players are going to perform off court. And that's probably testament to how, obviously Riders are finishing top four over the last sort of few years. And obviously we've had quite a lot of success in the past. I know because I think he's been there a number of years, Rob, hasn't he now?
Yeah, I couldn't tell you exactly, but it's been a long time. So he's definitely put his stamp on the program. And, like I said, his main concern is always just, are we ready on a game day? So it's understanding that, and then just advice to the people listening is the better you know your sport, the easier those conversations are going to be with the coach. So my basketball background really helps because if he's talking through a drill that he's potentially going to go to next, I actually understand the stimulus that's coming from it. And then you can kind of talk it up and go, yeah, let's definitely do this. Today's a high day. I want this drill. Or you can actually offer substitute drills that work on similar stuff that aren't as extreme, depending on kind of what you're looking for with the on-court load. So yeah, the better you understand the UNCs of the sport, the higher the success rate that you're going to have. So
without that. Yeah. So at the minute, obviously we're in lockdown at the minute. I mean, I've seen a few videos with yourself checking in the players. How are you managing at the moment to keep the players accountable for the training? What, if you can, what sort of structure have you got in place at the moment for when the players are returning to get back on court?
Yeah. So right now, I said this before we started this podcast, but it's kind of treating them like they're rehabilitating athletes. And I think that's the best mindset and approach to have because, no one has access to their sport. Our arena's shut, so we can't go in. They can't do on-court work. So it is that scenario where, they're almost rehabbing. They're away. They can't do it. They've got a set amount of time that they're away for. So you can only focus on our side of things. So for me, it's a great opportunity, but you have to be mindful like you would be if you were working with someone who's injured, which is, hey, these guys, they're sport athletes. They're not weight room athletes. This isn't, this isn't their this isn't what they were dreaming about doing their whole life, is doing S&C work, you know.
Yeah.
What they've been dreaming about is playing a sport, and now that opportunity's gone. For us, our season was just, you know, it's suspended and was paused. So, you know, all the work that you've been putting in for 2/3 of a year, and now that's just gone out the window. So you have to be, you have to bring in those soft skills, those people skills, and just be very mindful of all of this when you're trying to push those athletes. So we're really approaching it light and off season.
Yeah.
So where I can, I'm having calls with athletes. I'm having athletes send me videos of their workouts, offering feedback to it, making sure that they're doing it, and I'm holding them accountable for that. But in terms of like from a monitoring side of things, I don't mind too much because I'm assigning, everything's assigned by me, you know. So I'm assigning those runs that they're going on, so I can, you know, I'm periodizing that work. I'm responsible for everything, versus when you're monitoring in season and you're kind of just trying to stay on top of what's happening on court, that's out of your control. You know, for me now, 100% of what they're doing is what I'm prescribing. So I'm a lot more comfortable with the work. So obviously I'm going to have conversations, see how athletes are feeling. But there isn't that as in depth. I mean, I can't send everyone the jump equipment to keep tracking the jump height and everything like that. So, so from a monitoring side of things, it's just more conversations than anything, and just making sure the athletes are staying on top of it. And then from a practical sense, what I'm doing with them is the biggest thing, the first thing is just understanding what they have access to. That's always a big one. So a lot of top leagues, they were able to break down their gyms and hand things out to their athletes. That wasn't an option for us. So, you know, I handed out some resistance bands to players that were local. Some players have TRXs and different equipment, but most of the time it's just, hey, I have a foam roller, I have some towels, because I know we're all finding the most amount of uses for a towel. So
just don't know, it's like I can't get it anymore.
Just so many exercises created using a towel. But so from a strength side of things, that was the main thing, was kind of figuring out what they have access to, and then just finding ways to challenge maximal force. I think that's the biggest challenge from a strength side is, hey, we can put as much volume as we need, and we can do exercises that are going to be like 15 reps, but, you know, what are the athletes going to be getting from this? So it's just getting really creative, trying to find ways in which you're developing exercises. So something like isometric mid-thigh pull with a towel, where they just stood on it with one leg and they're pulling up either side of the leg with the towel and pulling as hard as they can to get some form of maximal force of an iso. Like, maybe I'm not developing strength, but I'm not losing it. And I feel that's kind of, you have to be really realistic in this time in what you're going to be able to get with the athlete. So my biggest thing is, hey, all my athletes developed some great strength this season. So if we don't lose anything, I'm taking that as a huge win. And then if you happen to develop some strength, you know, obviously it won't be barbell strength because it won't transfer as well. But, you know, just from a pure force output perspective, if you haven't lost anything, I'm taking that as a win. And then also just making sure that the guys are out putting force in the ground. So all my players are doing speed work multiple times a week, jumping, cutting, change direction work, just, you know, making sure that we're exposing their tissues to this kind of work and the tendons, and making sure that they can withstand this. Because you look at a lot of the research that is coming out from previous things, like the 2011 NFL lockout. I don't know if you've seen that piece of research, but really interesting. So there was a lockout in 2011 in the NFL, and players weren't even allowed to access their team trainers, so like team strength conditioning coaches, team physios.
Yeah.
And in the first month back after this lockout, the rate of Achilles tendon ruptures was 10 times higher than average through that first month. So it's just that, and you're just trying to understand kind of, okay, what are they not getting? I'm happy from a strength side and a tissue conditioning side of things. Like, I'm not too worried about that because, you know, I can control that. But the biggest thing is the movement patterns and the motor control and stuff like that. Because sorry,
it's fundamentals, isn't it? Getting
yeah, and that's the thing. Like if you're just getting your athlete to do home workouts inside, they're not getting that exposure. And I know I can't do anything to recreate basketball because of how unpredictable it is. But at least if we're still developing and optimizing and cleaning up those movement patterns, when they come back, it's going to take less time for the body to be able to connect those dots again inside your head and be able to link those movement patterns, how I cut when I react to someone, how I do this. And because that's where all the injuries occur. That's where an ACL rupture occurs. That's where an Achilles rupture occurs. So it's just making sure that I'm doing what I can do to keep those topped up. That's honestly might be more important than all the strength work that they're doing at home.
Yeah, without a doubt. And it's a great time for analysis and self-reflection, isn't it, as well, from the obviously yourself, your perspective, the coach's perspective, and the player's perspective as well. And, you know, so for the guys that want to find out a bit more about the work that you do, where's the best place to find out about you and to connect with you?
So my two main platforms are LinkedIn and Instagram. So LinkedIn's just my name, Jordan Godfrey, and then on Instagram it's Jordan J Godfrey. So on there, and my big thing right now is to make the most of this downtime. I'm trying to have as many conversations like this one. So please, if you're interested, reach out. I'm more than happy to offer my time because I'm just trying to learn from people, put my thoughts out there and get critiqued on it. So please reach out just like Chris did. And yeah, this was awesome.
Yeah, mate, it's been an absolute pleasure having you on the show. It's really insightful as well. And there's been a lot of take-homes from this. And I'm sure everybody that's watching, listening, is going to get a lot out of it as well. So, John, I really appreciate your time, buddy. Any final thoughts for anyone in this time of negativity, I suppose we could call it?
Yeah, just find ways to do stuff that makes you happy. I think that's the biggest thing. We all have a lot of time on our hands, so just making sure daily or just finding ways, and that's a big thing for athletes as well, is just making sure from that wellness side of things that, you know, we're happy. And it's very stressful times with all the media, everything that's getting put out. So yeah, find something that's going to put a smile on your face would be my message.
So the Coronation Street Omnibus, that's going on later on. Hey, Joe, fantastic. But guys, get over and check out Jordan on Instagram. Some fantastic videos on there. And Jordan, all the best for the rest of the season, buddy, and stay safe.
Thank you. You too. Cheers.
Cheers, buddy.